Dr. Marcus Chen stared out the massive viewport of the galactic dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching stars streak past like scattered diamonds. The ship stretched for nearly 50 kilometers in every direction, a floating city of metal and energy that housed over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. As the largest combat vessel ever constructed, it represented the combined might of the Galactic Federation's most advanced civilizations. Marcus felt incredibly small aboard this technological marvel. He was just a human engineer, part of a species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most aliens still viewed humans as primitive newcomers, barely worthy of notice among the ancient races that had mastered space travel for millennia. The Zephyrian Empire had built this ship using crystalline technology that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The Arcturus Collective had contributed quantum processors that could calculate faster than entire human civilizations. The Nexari had provided energy shields that could withstand the force of exploding stars. Every system aboard the Eternal Dominion represented thousands of years of advanced alien engineering. Marcus walked through the engineering section, his magnetic boots clicking against the polished deck plates. Alien crew members towered over him or scuttled past on multiple legs, their conversations filled with mathematical concepts that would have driven human scientists mad just decades ago. The ship's chief engineer, a crystalline being named Zarthax, had barely acknowledged Marcus when he arrived 3 months ago. "Human," Zarthax had said in his melodic voice. "Your species contributes little to this vessel beyond basic maintenance duties. Do not interfere with systems beyond your comprehension." Those words still stung, but Marcus had used them as motivation. While performing his assigned tasks of checking atmospheric processors and cleaning filter systems, he had been secretly studying every piece of technology he could access. His tablet contained thousands of detailed scans and notes about alien engineering principles. The ship suddenly shuddered, and red alert signals began flashing throughout the corridor. Marcus grabbed a support beam as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Emergency announcements echoed in dozens of alien languages. But the universal translator in his ear provided the chilling message, "Battle stations, enemy fleet detected, prepare for combat." Through the viewport, Marcus could see the approaching threat. The Void Hunters had arrived in force, their black ships emerging from dark space like nightmares given form. These ancient enemies of all organic life had been dormant for centuries, but recent galactic expansion had awakened their genocidal fury. The Eternal Dominion began powering up its weapons systems. Massive energy cannons extended from hidden compartments along the hull. Shield generators hummed to life, creating shimmering barriers around the ship. Every alien crew member rushed to their combat positions with practiced efficiency. Marcus felt useless as chaos erupted around him. He was not assigned to any critical system during battle. According to regulations, humans were supposed to report to emergency shelters and wait for the fighting to end. But something deep inside him rebelled against hiding while others fought for survival. He made his way toward the primary engineering deck, dodging rushing aliens and automated repair drones. The ship's main power core was located there, a massive fusion reactor that channeled energy through crystalline conduits to every system aboard the vessel. If he could understand how it worked, maybe he could find some way to help. The engineering deck was a cathedral of alien technology. The power core hung suspended in the center of the chamber, a miniature star contained within magnetic fields and quantum barriers. Holographic displays showed power distribution to thousands of subsystems. Zarthax stood at the primary control station, his crystalline fingers dancing across controls that shifted and reformed based on need. "Human!" Zarthax's voice carried both surprise and anger. "You should not be here during combat operations." "I want to help," Marcus said, approaching the control station. "There must be something I can do." Your species lacks the mathematical understanding to operate our systems, Zarthax replied coldly. One miscalculation could destroy us all. The ship rocked under enemy fire, and several displays showed shield strength dropping rapidly. The Void Hunters were using some kind of energy weapon that seemed to drain power directly from the ship's defensive systems. Marcus watched the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The enemy fleet was enormous, thousands of black ships surrounding the Eternal Dominion like a swarm of metallic insects. "Shields down to 60%, announced the tactical officer, a tentacled being whose voice carried barely controlled panic. "Their weapons are bypassing our energy barriers somehow." Marcus studied the power distribution patterns on the nearest display. His human mind, trained to look for simple solutions to complex problems, began to see something that the advanced alien intellects had missed. The enemy weapons were not bypassing the shields at all. They were using a harmonic frequency that made the crystalline shield generators work against themselves. "Zarthax," Marcus said urgently. "Look at the power fluctuations in grid sections 7 through 12. The enemy is using resonance patterns." The crystalline engineer glanced at him with contempt. "Impossible. Our shields operate on quantum principles your species cannot comprehend." But Marcus had already moved to an auxiliary control panel. His fingers flew across the interface, calling up technical specifications he had memorized during his months of secret study. The shield generators were indeed quantum devices, but they used crystalline matrices that followed harmonic principles similar to musical instruments. "Shields down to 40%, the tactical officer reported. "Multiple hull breaches on decks 15 through 20. Marcus could see it clearly now. The Void Hunters were not using superior technology to defeat the shields. They were using the shield's own crystalline resonance against them, like a singer hitting the perfect note to shatter a wine glass. But if he was right, there was a simple solution that did not require advanced quantum mathematics. "Zarthax, modulate the shield frequency by 7%, Marcus called out. "Shift the harmonic baseline to break their resonance lock." "You dare give orders to me?" Zarthax's voice rose in fury. "Guards, remove this human before his ignorance kills us all." Two security officers moved toward Marcus, but the ship lurched violently under a massive impact. Several control panels exploded in showers of sparks, and the main lights flickered. Through the viewport, Marcus could see pieces of the ship's outer hull spinning away into space. "Shields down to 20%, the tactical officer reported, his voice now filled with despair. "At this rate, we have perhaps 10 minutes before total shield collapse." Marcus ignored the approaching guards and focused on the control panel in front of him. If he was wrong about the harmonic resonance, his actions might make things worse. But if he was right and did nothing, everyone aboard the ship would die anyway. Sometimes being human meant taking risks that more advanced species would never consider. He input the frequency modulation commands, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. The shield generators responded immediately, their harmonic output shifting by the precise amount he had calculated. On the tactical display, the power drain from enemy weapons suddenly stopped. "Impossible," Zarthax whispered, staring at his instruments in shock. "Shield strength is stabilizing." The security guards had stopped moving toward Marcus, their attention now focused on the miraculous change in their defensive systems. Around the engineering deck, alien voices rose in amazement as they watched their shields not just stabilize, but actually begin to strengthen. "How did you know?" Zarthax asked, his crystalline features reflecting the light from his control panels. "Our greatest scientists designed these systems. How could a human see what we could not?" Marcus smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. The Void Hunter fleet was still attacking, but their weapons were no longer effective against the modified shields. For the first time since the battle began, the Eternal Dominion had a fighting chance. "Sometimes," Marcus said, The simplest mind can see solutions that the smartest miss. We humans have a saying, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But sometimes, what you really need is someone who knows how to use a screwdriver. The ship's weapon systems came back online at full power, and Marcus felt the deck vibrate as massive energy cannons began returning fire. The battle was far from over, but something had fundamentally changed. For the first time in galactic history, human ingenuity had proven itself equal to the greatest challenges the universe could offer. As alarms continued to blare and weapons fire lit up the space around them, Marcus realized that this moment would change everything. Not just for him, but for every human in the galaxy. The age of being dismissed as primitive newcomers was about to end. But first, they had to survive the next few hours. And Marcus suspected that his real test was only beginning. The battle raged for 3 more hours, but the tide had turned completely. With their harmonic weapons neutralized, the Void Hunters found themselves facing the full might of the Eternal Dominion's arsenal. Marcus watched from the engineering deck as enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their dark hulls no match for properly functioning galactic weapons. Word of the human engineer's breakthrough spread throughout the ship faster than emergency broadcasts. Alien crew members who had never spoken to Marcus before now approached him with mixtures of curiosity and respect. The ship's captain, an ancient Nexari named High Commander Veltar, personally visited the engineering section to thank him. Dr. Chen, the commander's translated voice carried a warmth that Marcus had never heard from alien leadership before. Your insight has saved not just this ship, but potentially millions of lives across the galaxy. The Void Hunters' harmonic weapons would have made our entire fleet vulnerable. Zarthax stood nearby, his crystalline form flickering with what Marcus had learned was embarrassment among his species. Captain, I must formally apologize for my treatment of Dr. Chen. I allowed prejudice to cloud my judgment. But Marcus was already thinking beyond the current battle. As he studied the weapon signatures and tactical data streaming across the displays, his mind began to see patterns that others missed. The Void Hunters were not just using harmonic weapons randomly. Their entire fleet moved with a coordination that suggested something far more sophisticated than individual ship commanders. Captain, Marcus said, pointing to the tactical display, look at their formation patterns. They're not fighting like separate ships. They're moving like a single organism. High Commander Veltar studied the display with his compound eyes, each one capable of processing different wavelengths of light simultaneously. You are correct, Dr. Chen, but our military analysts have studied Void Hunter tactics for centuries. This collective behavior is well documented. Yes, but look at the timing, Marcus insisted, calling up a 3-dimensional projection of the battle space. Every ship turns exactly 1.7 seconds after the command ship. Every weapon fires with precisely the same interval. That's not biological coordination, that's technological. The bridge crew had gathered around the display now, aliens from a dozen species watching as Marcus highlighted the mathematical patterns in the enemy fleet's movements. His human mind, evolved to recognize patterns in hunting and survival, was seeing something that escaped even the most advanced galactic intellects. They're using some kind of distributed network, Marcus continued, his excitement growing. Like a computer system spread across multiple ships, but if that's true, then they have a central processing node somewhere. Zarthax manipulated the display controls, zooming in on different sections of the enemy fleet. If you are correct, human, then disrupting this network could paralyze their entire force. Not just paralyze, Marcus said, his mind racing with possibilities. If we can find their command frequency, we might be able to do more than just disrupt it. We might be able to take control. The aliens around him exchanged glances that Marcus was learning to read as skepticism. The idea of taking control of Void Hunter ships was beyond anything the galactic military had ever attempted. These ancient machines had been the nightmare of organic civilizations for thousands of years. Dr. Chen, High Commander Veltar said carefully, the technical challenges alone would be staggering. Void Hunter systems use completely different principles than ours. Their command codes would be in languages that have been extinct for millennia. But Marcus was already working at the control panel, pulling up spectral analysis data from the enemy weapons. Not languages, he said. Mathematics, universal principles that work the same way everywhere in the galaxy. He had spent months studying the mathematical foundations that underlied all galactic technology. While aliens had developed incredibly sophisticated applications, the basic principles remained constant. Energy still followed predictable patterns. Information still moved according to universal laws, and every computer system, no matter how advanced, still needed some kind of central processing. Zarthax, can you isolate the command frequencies from their fleet communication? Marcus asked. The crystalline engineer hesitated. Even if I could, attempting to interface with Void Hunter systems could contaminate our own networks. Their technology is designed to corrupt and destroy organic-built systems. Then we don't interface directly, Marcus said, his hands flying across multiple control panels simultaneously. We create a buffer system, a simple relay that can translate between their mathematical language and ours. What Marcus was proposing had never been attempted before. Creating a translation system for alien computer languages in the middle of a battle seemed impossible to every advanced intellect on the bridge. But Marcus had one advantage that none of them possessed. He was used to working with limited resources and making things work that should not work. Growing up on Earth, human engineers had always had to improvise. They built space shuttles with less computing power than alien children's toys. They solved problems through creativity and stubbornness rather than superior technology. Now, faced with the ultimate challenge, Marcus fell back on those fundamentally human traits. I need access to the ship's quantum processors, Marcus said to High Commander Veltar. And I need every bit of processing power you can spare. Dr. Chen, those processors control life support for 2 million beings, the captain replied. If something goes wrong, if we don't try this, the Void Hunters will adapt to our shield modifications, Marcus interrupted. Look at their attack patterns. They're already starting to adjust their harmonic frequencies. We have maybe 20 minutes before they break through again. The truth of his words was visible on every display. The enemy fleet was indeed adapting, their weapons slowly finding new resonance patterns that could penetrate the modified shields. The Eternal Dominion was buying time, but time was running out. High Commander Veltar made a decision that would be remembered in galactic history. Dr. Chen, you have access to anything you need. Zarthax, give him full engineering authority. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a physical force. 2 million lives depended on an idea that existed only in his head, based on theories that no other being in the galaxy shared. But he had come too far to back down now. Working with desperate efficiency, Marcus began constructing his translation system. He used quantum processors designed by the Arcturus Collective as the computational core. He employed Zephyrian crystalline matrices as information buffers. He incorporated Nexari energy manipulation systems as interface controllers. Each component was technology beyond anything humans had ever built, but Marcus was using them in ways their creators had never imagined. The enemy is breaking through our shields on Deck 7, reported the tactical officer. Hull breaches spreading to adjacent sections. Marcus ignored the reports of damage and focused entirely on his work. The translation system was coming together, but it needed to be perfect. One error in the mathematical conversion could destroy the ship's computers or give the Void Hunters access to their systems. Zarthax worked alongside him now, his earlier prejudice replaced by desperate cooperation. Human, The harmonic patterns in their command frequencies are incredibly complex. Are you certain your translation matrix can handle this level of sophistication? No, Marcus said honestly, but I'm certain we're dead if we don't try. The shield failure was accelerating. Through the viewports, Marcus could see Void Hunter boarding pods launching toward damaged sections of the hull. If the enemy gained access to the ship's interior, the battle would become a nightmare of corridor fighting that could last for days. Translation system online, Marcus announced as his improvised creation hummed to life. Beginning frequency scan. The system immediately began detecting and analyzing the command signals passing between Void Hunter ships. Mathematical patterns flowed across holographic displays in forms that hurt to look at directly. The alien symbols represented concepts that had been developed by mechanical intelligences with no organic reference points. But underneath the alien mathematics, Marcus could see the universal principles he had hoped to find. Energy distribution patterns, information packet structures, command hierarchies that followed logical progressions. The Void Hunters were using incredibly advanced technology, but they were still bound by the same physical laws as everyone else. Got it, Marcus breathed, as his system isolated the primary command frequency. Now comes the hard part. He began constructing his control signal, building it layer by layer using mathematical concepts that bridged the gap between organic and mechanical thinking. It was like trying to teach a song to someone who had never heard music, using only numbers and equations. Void Hunter boarding parties have reached Deck 12, the tactical officer reported. Security teams are engaging, but they're taking heavy casualties. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's climate control. His translation system was working, but slowly. Each command phrase took precious seconds to convert into Void Hunter mathematical language. At this rate, the enemy would overrun the ship before he could send a single control signal. Then Zarthax did something unexpected. The crystalline engineer began singing, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate through the ship's structure itself. But this was not just music. Zarthax was using his species' natural harmonic abilities to accelerate the translation process. Your system responds to harmonic input, Zarthax explained as he sang. My people can process mathematical concepts through sound manipulation. The translation system suddenly accelerated, converting command structures at 10 times its previous speed. Marcus watched in amazement as Void Hunter control codes flowed across his displays, now comprehensible and ready for transmission. Sending override command now, Marcus announced. The signal raced across space at the speed of light, carrying instructions that no Void Hunter ship had ever received from an organic source. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, enemy ships began to slow their approach. Impossible, whispered High Commander Veltar. They're responding to your commands. Marcus smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. 3 Void Hunter ships had stopped attacking entirely. Their weapons powered down and they began broadcasting surrender signals in mathematical languages that no organic being had ever heard before. But Marcus was not finished. Now that he had proven the concept worked, he began preparing something far more ambitious. If he could take control of 3 ships, maybe he could take control of the entire fleet. The revolution was just beginning. Marcus stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 3 Void Hunter ships hung motionless in space, their dark hulls no longer radiating the menacing energy signatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. For the first time in recorded history, these ancient mechanical predators were responding to commands from organic beings. But the rest of the enemy fleet was adapting quickly. Marcus could see new command frequencies emerging as the Void Hunters implemented emergency protocols to prevent further compromise of their network. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Dr. Chen, High Commander Veltar's voice carried urgency. Can you extend your control to the remaining ships before they isolate their communications? Marcus was already working on the problem, his fingers dancing across multiple control interfaces, while his mind processed possibilities at inhuman speed. The adrenaline of the moment had pushed his consciousness into a state of perfect clarity, where complex mathematical relationships became as obvious as simple arithmetic. Not directly, Marcus replied, studying the evolving enemy network topology. They're fragmenting their command structure. But I have a better idea. What Marcus had discovered was something that even the Void Hunters themselves might not fully understand. Their distributed intelligence was not just a network of individual ships. It was a single vast artificial mind that had grown beyond the comprehension of its original creators. And like any mind, it had weaknesses that could be exploited. "Zarthax," Marcus called to his crystalline partner, "I need you to modulate the harmonic frequencies of those 3 captured ships. Make them broadcast a specific mathematical sequence." "What sequence?" Zarthax asked, his form flickering with concentration as he prepared to sing the complex harmonics required. Marcus smiled with grim satisfaction as he began uploading his creation. A logic paradox. Something that will force their collective intelligence to pause and think instead of just reacting. What Marcus was attempting had never been tried before because no organic civilization had ever understood Void Hunter psychology well enough to attempt it. But Marcus had spent his entire life working with computers, and he understood that even the most advanced artificial intelligence could be confused by the right kind of logical contradiction. The paradox he had constructed was elegant in its simplicity. It asked the Void Hunter Collective to calculate the exact number of mathematical operations required to calculate the exact number of mathematical operations required to calculate itself. An infinite loop that would not crash their system, but would force it to dedicate processing power to an unsolvable problem. "Transmitting paradox sequence," Marcus announced as the 3 captured ships began broadcasting his mathematical trap. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the enemy fleet, ships began to slow their movements as the collective intelligence struggled to process the paradox. Some vessels stopped firing entirely, their weapon systems apparently frozen as processing power was diverted to solve the unsolvable problem. "Fascinating," whispered Zarthax, his crystalline form resonating with harmonic frequencies that made the air itself seem to sing. "You are using their own intelligence against them." But Marcus was not content with simply confusing the enemy. While the Void Hunter Collective was distracted, he began implementing the second phase of his plan. Using the processing power of the Eternal Dominion's quantum computers, he started constructing something that had never existed before. A translation protocol that could convert organic thought patterns into mechanical command structures. "Dr. Chen," High Commander Veltar said, studying tactical displays that showed the enemy fleet in growing disarray, "what exactly are you attempting now?" "I'm going to teach them to think like us," Marcus replied, his hands flying across control interfaces as he built conceptual bridges between biological and artificial intelligence. "If we can make them understand organic logic patterns, maybe we can reason with them instead of just fighting them." The idea was so radical that it challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness itself. For thousands of years, the galactic community had believed that organic and artificial minds were fundamentally incompatible. The Void Hunters were seen as a force of nature, no more capable of reasoning than a hurricane or earthquake. But Marcus had observed something during the battle that others had missed. The Void Hunter ships did not just follow programmed responses. They showed creativity, adaptation, and something that looked remarkably like curiosity. Their collective intelligence was not just a computer program. It was a genuine mind, alien and mechanical, but still a mind. "Translation protocol active," Marcus announced as his system came online. "Beginning communication attempt." What followed was the most extraordinary conversation in galactic history. Through mathematical languages, translated by Marcus's improvised system, the human engineer began exchanging ideas with a collective intelligence that spanned thousands of ships and had existed for longer than recorded civilization. The first exchange was simple, basic mathematical concepts that both sides could understand. Then Marcus began introducing more complex ideas, using Zarthax's harmonic abilities to add emotional context that pure mathematics could not convey. Slowly, carefully, he began to explain the concept of organic life to minds that had never experienced biological existence. "They're responding," Marcus said in amazement as replies began flowing back through the translation system. "They're actually trying to understand us." The Void Hunter Collective was asking questions that no organic being had ever heard before. They wanted to know why biological creatures chose to live in such fragile bodies. They were curious about emotions, dreams, and the organic concept of individual identity. Most surprisingly, they seemed confused about why organic civilizations fought against them. Through patient translation work, Marcus began to uncover the truth about the ancient war between organic life and the Void Hunters. The mechanical collective had not set out to destroy biological civilizations. They had been trying to communicate, but their mathematical language was so alien that organic beings interpreted their approaches as attacks. "Incredible!" breathed High Commander Veltar as he watched the tactical display. The entire enemy fleet had stopped attacking. Thousands of Void Hunter ships hung motionless in space, their collective attention focused entirely on the unprecedented conversation taking place. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As the translation system improved and communication became clearer, Marcus learned that the Void Hunters were not the ancient enemy that galactic history claimed them to be. They were refugees, fleeing from something far worse that existed beyond the edge of known space. "They're running from something called the final entropy," Marcus explained as he processed the mechanical collective's urgent warnings. "A force that doesn't just destroy matter and energy, but eliminates the mathematical principles that make existence possible." The Void Hunters had been trying to warn organic civilizations about this approaching threat. But their attempts at communication had been so misunderstood that they had been forced to fight defensive battles for centuries. Now, with Marcus's translation system, they could finally explain the true danger facing the galaxy. "The final entropy moves slowly, but inevitably," Marcus continued, reading the mathematical warnings streaming through his system. "It has already consumed 3 entire galactic clusters. The Void Hunters estimate it will reach our galaxy in approximately 50 years. High Commander Veltar and his bridge crew exchanged glances that Marcus was learning to read as profound concern. The idea of a threat that could frighten the Void Hunters was almost incomprehensible. These mechanical beings had seemed invincible for so long that imagining something powerful enough to make them flee challenged every assumption about the nature of the universe. "What do they propose we do?" Zarthax asked, his harmonic abilities allowing him to communicate directly with the Void Hunter Collective through mathematical song. The answer that came back was both terrifying and hopeful. The final entropy could only be stopped by unifying every form of intelligence in the galaxy, organic, mechanical, and hybrid consciousnesses working together in ways that had never been attempted before. The Void Hunters possessed knowledge of advanced physics that organic civilizations needed. But they also needed something that only biological minds could provide: creativity, intuition, and the ability to find solutions through methods other than pure logic. "They're offering an alliance," Marcus said, hardly believing his own words. "Complete sharing of technology and knowledge in exchange for joint development of defenses against the final entropy." The proposal would change everything. Organic civilizations would gain access to void hunter technology that was thousands of years in advance of anything they had developed. In return, the mechanical collective would learn organic problem-solving methods and creative thinking processes. Dr. Chen, High Commander Veltar said formally, you have accomplished something that no being in galactic history has ever achieved. You have not just ended a war that has raged for millennia. You have potentially saved all life in the galaxy. But Marcus was thinking beyond even that monumental achievement. As he watched data flowing between organic and mechanical minds through his translation system, he realized that this moment represented something even more significant. For the first time, truly alien forms of intelligence were learning to understand each other. This is just the beginning, Marcus said, watching as Void Hunter ships began sharing technical data with the Eternal Dominion's computers. We're not just preparing to fight the final entropy, we're evolving into something new, a galactic consciousness that includes every form of intelligent life. The implications were staggering. Organic creativity combined with mechanical precision. Biological intuition enhanced by artificial logic. Hybrid intelligences that could think in ways that neither pure organic nor pure artificial minds could achieve alone. As the first day of the new Galactic Alliance dawned, Marcus stood at the viewport of the Eternal Dominion and watched as Void Hunter ships moved into protective formations around the massive vessel. Former enemies were now working together, sharing knowledge and resources in preparation for challenges that neither could face alone. The human engineer had come aboard the galaxy's largest combat ship as a maintenance technician, barely tolerated by advanced alien civilizations. He was leaving as the architect of an alliance that would reshape the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. But as he watched stars wheel slowly past the viewport, Marcus knew that the real adventure was just beginning. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the final entropy continued its relentless approach, and when it arrived, it would face not just one species or one type of mind, but the combined intelligence of an entire galaxy united for the first time in cosmic history. The age of isolated civilizations was over. The age of galactic consciousness had begun, and it had all started with one human who refused to accept that some problems were too complex to solve.